With the Arctic Knight now having abilities to bounce off walls, there's one thing that I really wanted to try immediately, and that is to pair Energizer with a whole bunch of Arctic Knights and see how that does. It's going to reduce the cooldown of the Arctic Knight abilities big time. I believe it's now 40% instead of 50%. It did get nerfed in the recent update for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And for the hero, I decided to bring Churchill because I will be using the Energizer. The typical strategies that I've been looking at with this Arctic Knight kind of setup is going to either be Oben or Geraldo. Both really have no benefit with the Energizer at all, so I thought it would be better just to get something that would have benefit with the Energizer, which will go for Churchill, and also it will do a good amount of damage on round 100, which really seems to be the big weakness. And then I'll also be looking at on how good is it on a map that doesn't have like walls at all, because the projectiles will bounce off the border with the bug, but there are no walls on the map, and I kind of wanted to see if that's really something that changes the game a lot. And the answer, just to kind of spoil a little bit, is yes, it changes a lot. It's a lot weaker on a map that literally has no walls, but it's still not that bad, as you'll see from the result at the end of what I'm kind of working with when it comes to Cash Bear. So it's really cool, really interesting, nothing really too crazy. I'm just really kind of experimenting and trying some stuff out on my own time. So I started out the early game by getting Reactor, which will be Energizer later, and regardless I'll kind of need that for around 95 with the purples. As the Riptide champion, it has like some weird, I think it's called frigid damage type, which is, I believe, unique to the Riptide champion or something like that. It's really weird, but it can't pop purples, which means you kind of need something to beat round 95. So I got Churchill down early with the help of that, and that's going to become Energizer later. And then I went for a discount, a shove, and these Riptide champions. It was a little bit sketchy in some of the rounds of the early game, especially because these guys attack really slowly, so they just often chase stuff. And then with the downdraft, no, not that downdraft, mob shove, I'm able to move everything back. Now that was actually the early game from the first run that I did, which kind of failed in the late game. And then this is the second attempt where I actually got the Energizer a few rounds earlier, which is pretty cool, but it doesn't really do anything. I'm going to be getting level 98 level 98 on the same round regardless, so it's whatever, but it's, I guess, a cooler early game. And then I'm able to move on with just getting a whole bunch of Arctic Knights, and then I can just use the abilities whenever. And with Energizer, they come up super fast, which is pretty darn cool. If you're doing stuff like black borders, this actually makes it a lot more consistent, I'm gonna be honest. You really can just get them off the rip, and if you have like 6 or 7 of them, that actually was not intentional, please save me, but if you get like a good amount of them, then you'll be able to do really well and just use one after the other, and then they'll all start coming back like it's nothing. So it's actually pretty cool if you're trying to find like a nice, consistent, easy black border. Even though that the tower itself, the tier 3 especially, isn't very consistent, the upgrade for the Arctic Knight is actually really good with consistency when it comes to that with the Energizer, which is really nice. But going for Cash Bear, this actually isn't the craziest thing, because you're going to be stalling out all the rounds ideally, and then with that you just get the abilities up for every single round. So it doesn't really matter if the cooldowns are super short. The only round that this would make a difference, I feel like, is 96, which really isn't a big deal, because the heavy rounds like 98, 96 is where the Arctic Knights excel at, which I'll mention a little bit later. So the last thing that I really wanted to mention here in the middle section, I guess it's kind of pushing on towards the end, is the walls. And I thought it wouldn't be really that big of a deal if there was no walls on the map and the Arctic Knight would shoot just off the map borders, which is a bug, by the way. They will fix it, so this crazy strategy is kind of only temporary-ish. So if you want to do stuff with it, you definitely have to do it now. But it's actually a big deal that it doesn't have walls, because a lot of the time the projectiles will bounce like so far across the screen that by the time they hit a target a few times, they haven't used all their pierce and they just ran out, which is kind of a big deal for rounds that don't have a gigantic amount of stuff like it. So it's really good against stuff like 98, but for DDTs it's it could be better, but for round 100 it is not good at all, which is kind of a big deal. So even with level 28 Churchill on round 100, which does a lot of round 100 damage, I'm still going to need a whole Spike Storm, and I'm not sure if I'm going to upload it, but I did another kind of run with Oben and without Energizer, just seeing how that is, but that did brutally bad on round 100, so not very cool. Anyways, if you want to have good damage against round 100 exclusively, you will need a map with a lot of walls, which is kind of a thing to note about, but maybe you probably, if you're working with the full budget, this really wouldn't be a big deal, especially because considering round 98 and stuff like that in most setups usually is the hardest round, and it will excel at that even if there are no walls. So that's good to note. Maybe you could pair this with a Carpet of Spikes. That would be very good, because that will do very well against the DDTs, and then also it will do very well against round 100. And I'm just going into the late game now and seeing how this is going to run. So lastly, as I mentioned, coming up on round 98, it does do very well here. I did have to get a Moab glue, unfortunately, just to do a little bit more, but with that glue strike, I was able to kind of clean things up really well. And I did get that glue strike kind of hoping that it would really allow the Arctic Knights to do a lot more damage on round 100, but I really feel like this wasn't the best thing and it didn't help out a lot. It probably did really help out a lot on stuff like 98 though, so maybe it wasn't really the worst of ideas, but it was pretty cheap, and it also really helped with all those zebras that they leave behind, so that's pretty good. But with that and then Churchill and the Spike Storm, I was able to take round 100 and finish off with 57,000 cash berry, so not bad, but for the hype that I've been getting on this thing, it really isn't that good, and that's just because it's a map without walls, and you're gonna need something like Ravine or Dark Dungeons for it to really excel. Thanks for watching. If you want to help out the channel, you can check out these new videos, like and subscribe for more content, support the channel by becoming a member, and joining the Discord to chat with the community. Bye!